Hey guys, welcome to this week's FAQ and Freebie Friday. Now for those of you new to the channel, these videos are all about answering your health related questions. So if you have a question concerning your health, something regarding health in general, diet, nutrition, herbalism, Chinese medicine, fitness, or again anything related to health and wellness, and you would like our help in answering your questions, all you have to do is leave those questions in the comment section below, and we'll be answering those based on popularity, the questions that we feel are going to be the most beneficial to the group as a whole, and of course the questions that we are capable of answering. And something else really great about these videos is that every week from that comment section, we select one lucky person to win a free bag of tonic herbs or medicinal mushrooms. And here's the good news. Even if you don't have a question for us this week, but you'd still like to be entered to win some free herbs or mushrooms, all you have to do is make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't yet already, give this video a thumbs up, and then just drop any comment in the comment section. And with all that being said, let's get to this week's questions. Alright, so taking a look at our first question, this is a pretty straightforward question and something that I think everybody can relate to, which is a question about sleep. This question reads, I would love to know what you would recommend for help with getting to sleep and better sleeping throughout the night. Okay, so sleep trouble is something that most people deal with. I think even the most balanced, healthy person in mind, body, and spirit is going to run into times where they're having trouble sleeping. So I just want to point this out first and foremost because I just want to be transparent about the fact that even the healthiest people are going to have days or periods in their life where they're having more difficulties sleeping than not. So this is a pretty natural and normal occurrence, and the reason for it is really related to stress. So I know this is a broad range term. It's sort of like a cop-out or a blanket statement to say sleep problems are caused by stress, but I want to explain what I mean by that and give you some examples and then also give you a couple of tips for managing some of the common stressors that might interfere with sleep. But the first thing I just want to explain is that sleep, although a rejuvenative process, can actually be a stress in the sense that when you're sleeping, your body tends to go into a more catabolistic phase before you start building back up and go into this anabolic phase. So sleep is both a catabolistic thing and an anabolic thing. And in terms of the stress of sleep, this really comes about because of the stress hormones that tend to elevate or rise while you're sleeping, which is mostly induced by darkness. So when you are not exposed to bright light or sunlight, your body actually tends to increase the production of stress hormones like cortisol, like adrenaline, your blood sugar starts to drop, serotonin starts to rise, and all of these things work to sort of slow down your metabolic rate, decrease your body's requirements for energy, so that way it can start cleaning house, in other words, and rejuvenating the body and repairing the body. So considering this, really the secret to staying asleep or having rejuvenative sleep is all about keeping the stress of sleep at a minimum. So generally speaking, keeping the metabolism high is going to be the simplest thing that you can do to protect yourself against the stress hormones that tend to rise while you're sleeping. So there's a lot of things you can do to obviously increase the metabolic rate or improve your overall resilience or resistance to stress. This is really the big goal. The big picture goal is to keep your body more resilient to stress by keeping a high rate of metabolism. Fortunately, there are some very simple things you can do to mitigate the stress of sleep or the stress hormones that rise while you're sleeping. And some of the simplest things that you can do before bed to avoid a stress response is to take some form of glucose, some sort of carbohydrate. And this is why something like honey is often recommended before bed, because honey is very rich in fructose and sucrose, so it's a good source of glucose that ultimately becomes glycogen for the liver to perform its functions. And this is going to be helpful for a couple of reasons. On one hand, the glucose in something like raw honey is going to directly stop the stress response. So your blood sugar and cortisol tend to regulate one another. So if you take in a healthy form of carbohydrate like raw honey before bed, you're going to keep the cortisol low and you're going to make sure your blood sugar isn't dropping to the point of being too low. And this is important because if your blood sugar gets too low, then your cortisol and adrenaline rise. So it's really important before you go to bed that your blood sugar is stable. So taking something like raw honey before bed, maybe with a little bit of grass-fed ghee, would be really smart in terms of regulating the blood sugar and preventing a cortisol and adrenaline spike while you're sleeping. The other thing I'd recommend is maybe taking a little bit of salt, like a quarter teaspoon of salt before bed, which can help with the adrenal glands from also becoming overstimulated and again secreting adrenaline and other stress hormones like aldosterone. So one of the major reasons again that people are not getting restful sleep or they're waking up in the middle of the night is because their body is going into a stress response because their blood sugar is plummeting. And when this occurs, the stress hormones adrenaline and cortisol rise, and this can cause a person to either directly wake up in the middle of the night or have the body shift from a more parasympathetic, rebuilding, rejuvenative state into this more sympathetic state, which will interfere with restful, rejuvenative sleep. So in addition to getting in some healthy sugars and some salt before bed, I'd also consider looking into the use of adaptogenic herbs like ashwagandha and even taking something like gelatin or collagen before bed. Both of these things are GABA agonists, so they help to increase the production of GABA, which helps to suppress cortisol. So I think a traditional Ayurvedic tonic of high quality grass-fed milk, throw in some raw honey, a dash of salt, some ashwagandha, and some collagen or gelatin, heat it up and drink that before bed. You're going to have the perfect anti-stress tonic that is correcting the primary cause of sleep disturbances, which again is usually a stress response. And again, the thing that's important to understand is one of the major reasons people tend to go into this stress response while they're sleeping is because their blood sugar plummets. So on the short term, taking a tonic like this can be very beneficial, but also keep in mind there are plenty of other factors that can be contributing to the stress response that tends to occur during sleep. For example, liver impairment could be a huge one, and low thyroid function. So if your thyroid is low, that's going to also slow down the functioning of the liver, and that's going to make your liver less capable or efficient at storing glycogen. And if your liver is not storing adequate glycogen, your body's more likely to have a drop in blood sugar and a rise in the stress response or the stimulation of the adrenal glands. But fortunately, all the things I mentioned in this tonic would not just be beneficial for lowering the stress response, but they have beneficial effects in terms of supporting thyroid health. So in the short term, a tonic like this should help to prevent the drop of blood sugar and the rise of stress hormones. And then on the long term, you're going to want to take a look at improving thyroid function, so that way your body's less reliant on adrenal function and the stress hormones secreted from the adrenals and pituitary, and also taking a look at improving liver health and liver function. And these are topics that we discuss in great detail in all of our online courses. So if you're interested in optimizing or improving thyroid function and liver function, definitely be sure to check out our online wellness academy. But taking a look at the first part of your question, the trouble falling asleep is a different problem than the trouble staying asleep. On one hand, there could be a physiological imbalance, like you're already in a stress state. Perhaps you are functioning from, a high level of adrenaline or cortisol already. This is contributing to sort of anxiety and a racing mind. But I tend to find that the inability to fall asleep is more of a psychological imbalance. So there's a saying that troubled sleep equates to a troubled mind. And then, there's all the ancient sayings that there's, no rest for the wicked, these sorts of ideas where basically what they're saying or what these statements are getting at is if your mind is very troubled, if you're, thinking a lot about problems, or if you're focused on, negative things, or if you're just generally not having positive thoughts in any way, if you're just, having a bunch of bad thoughts, if you're worried about things, then if you're focusing on problems without posing solutions, or if you're just generally more pessimistic, then this is going to make it very difficult to fall asleep. So I think it's really important to take a look at your state of mind before you get to bed. And one thing that's really helpful on a practical level is journaling. So getting a journal out. And a lot of the times it's not just bad thoughts or pessimistic thoughts that keep people from falling asleep, but incomplete thoughts or incomplete cycles of action. So a cycle of action is basically a start, a continuation, and a completion. And everything we do, there is this cycle of action. Every conversation has a start, a middle, and an end, or a beginning, a middle, and end. This video has a beginning, middle, and an end. Our lives have a beginning, middle, and end. And so do our days. But a lot of people don't look at this or consider the cycles that they're going through throughout a day or throughout their life. And this can lead to the sensation of feeling incomplete or like something needs to get done. But if you're not aware of the incomplete cycles in your life, your mind will just race. And that's really what anxiety is. Anxiety is a constant constant thinking without posing a solution. So it's just obsessive compulsive thinking, but you're not thinking in a way that's productive, which would be to pose a solution. You think about a problem, you think it through, and then you complete it by posing a solution. So I find a really helpful practice is to take out a journal and write down all of the things that you got done that day, all of the things that you wanted to get done, and all of the things that you want to get done the next day. So this is really just going to help you take a look at the cycles of action that you went through in that day. And what you'll probably start to see is that if there's things that you left incomplete for that day, that's going to contribute to this sense of uneasiness and the inability to relax. And I usually give the example, imagine you started a cycle of action around cooking, and you turned on the stove, you made the food, you ate it, but you never did the dishes, or if you never shut the stove off. And then you tried to go to bed. And I'd imagine for most people it'd be difficult to fall asleep if you're thinking that the stove is still on or not. So this is just an example of an incomplete cycle of action and how it might contribute to the inability to relax. You're going to feel a lot more relaxed when you're looking at a piece of paper and seeing that you did everything you wanted to do for that day. Or if you become aware of something or many things you didn't finish that day, it'll be helpful because you can decide to start them and finish them tomorrow. So that way, at least you can go to bed, because chances are the things that you wanted to get done that you didn't get done, you're not going to get done while you're lying in bed. So that's just a very practical exercise, I think, that is probably more important than anything else in regards to falling asleep. If your mind can relax, your body's going to be able to relax as well. But I think combining both of these things, correcting it from a physiological perspective and the psychological perspective, should give you a rather thorough solution in regards to falling asleep and staying asleep. All right, so taking a look at our second question. This question reads, can you give suggestions for reduced blood flow in feet and hands during the winter? All right, so poor blood circulation to the extremities is just a classic hypothyroid symptom. So next to just generally feeling cold intolerant or running into skin and hair issues, feeling chronically fatigued or feeling lethargy or just feeling run down or low energy, I think the most classic sign of hypothyroidism is being cold in the hands and feet. And if you've watched any of our videos, or I think this was maybe even the last FAQ or one before, I did point out a study that talks about the correlation between decreased blood flow and hypothyroidism. So I think the basic reason for this, for my understanding, other than the basic physiological fact that is the thyroid gland and the metabolism that pumps the circulatory system and drives the circulatory system, it is actually the production of carbon dioxide. So when your thyroid hormone is being secreted in an efficient amount, the thyroid hormone is what drives something called oxidative phosphorylation, which is the physiological term for sugar metabolism or the production of ATP from glucose. So it's the process of your cells making energy. And this is really thyroid hormone dependent because you can't oxidize glucose and make ATP via oxidative phosphorylation without oxygen. And it's actually the thyroid hormone which attaches with oxygen and delivers that oxygen to the cell to oxidize that glucose and to make ATP. And it is the carbon dioxide, which is a byproduct of oxidative phosphorylation, which is responsible for vasodilation. So our blood vessels dilating and basically driving circulation. So usually under low thyroid function, there's a decreased production of carbon dioxide. The blood is less oxygenated. There's less carbon dioxide throughout the body. So your body tends to become more constricted. So the blood vessels tend to tighten up more. The capillaries tend to be more tight. And this is obviously going to impede or obstruct blood flow throughout the body, especially to the hands and feet. So when the thyroid is low, the circulatory system becomes sluggish. And really all of the major systems become sluggish when the thyroid is sluggish. And the reason that your hands and feet get less blood is just because, the vital organs are a lot more important. So when your body's in this low thyroid state, a stress state, your body's not going to care as much about getting blood flow to your scalp for growing pretty hair, to your hands and feet, as much as it's going to worry about getting blood flow to your vital organs to keep your body alive. So this is really, again, one of the major symptoms of hypothyroidism, and it tends to be more frequent or more likely during the wintertime because of the fact that, first of all, it's colder, so you're going to be more sensitive to the cold directly, because direct heat can also increase your metabolism too through androgen receptors in the skin. But also there's a lack of light during the wintertime, and sunlight does activate enzymes, respiratory enzymes that increase the rate of mitochondrial respiration or oxidative phosphorylation, and can directly increase the production of thyroid hormone too and lower stress hormones. So I think the lack of light and the cold in general are going to contribute to low thyroid function, which is going to worsen the symptoms of low thyroid, so cold hands and cold feet being at the top of that list of symptoms. So I think the thing you're going to want to do throughout the wintertime, one of the best things that you could do for correcting this is to not just improve thyroid function overall, but specifically speaking, during the wintertime, I think red light therapy is a must. So if you can't get an infrared sauna and sit in that for a while to boost the rate of metabolism, increase thyroid function, just warm you up directly, definitely look into getting some sort of red light therapy machine or just a red light infrared light bulb and sit under that. Put it on your face so it's going in your eyes and around your neck to increase thyroid function. I talk about that in this video here, so definitely check that video out to learn more about the pro-thyroid effects of red light and how you can use that to increase thyroid function during the wintertime. Otherwise, in all of our online courses, we're talking tons about how to improve thyroid function, and despite it being winter, despite there being a lack of light, it being more cold, there are a lot of things you can do to keep your thyroid higher, or at least prevent it from getting really low during the wintertime, so that way you're not running into all of these issues. So in addition to the use of red light therapy, I would highly recommend you check out one of our online courses to learn more about how to improve thyroid function from a holistic perspective, because there are so many things that affect the health of the thyroid gland. The diet's really important, your exercise habits are really important, your response to stress is huge, your general environment, where you live, so many things are affecting your thyroid gland. Your thyroid is regulating and dealing with all of the stressors, the extrinsic and intrinsic stressors all of the time. So there's a lot to learn in regards to how to heal your thyroid gland or to keep it healthy from a natural perspective. So you're definitely going to want to grab one of those courses or just watch every video we have on the YouTube channel in regards to thyroid health, so that way you can bring back up your circulatory system. But there are some more specific things that you could do to boost the circulatory system. I think one of my favorite herbs for this would be ginkgo biloba. This is a circulatory tonic. It also happens to be an indirect thyroid tonic because of its ability to lower a lot of the antagonist substances to thyroid function, like cortisol, like nitric oxide. So taking something like ginkgo biloba might increase your circulation over time, and it's really, again, one of the good herbs for correcting hypothyroidism. KSM 66 ashwagandha is a must-have herb for anyone with low thyroid function. So I think using red light therapy, trying some of these herbs for thyroid function, but then also grabbing our courses and learning how you can heal the thyroid from a dietary and lifestyle and supplemental perspective would be very beneficial. All right, guys, that brings this week's FAQ and Freebie Friday to a close. Remember, if you're interested in having your questions answered, or if you're interested in winning some free herbs and mushrooms, or both, all you have to do is simply subscribe to the YouTube channel, give this video a thumbs up, and just leave your questions and comments in the comment section below. Otherwise, for those of you whose questions I answered, if you're interested in referencing any of the herbs, courses, or material that I mentioned in this video, you can find links to all of that in the description box below.